Hello, everybody. We are live. Frank, good morning. I don't know. We'll see if he turns up. I didn't want to, if you've been watching Josh's streams, he has set out a very ambitious goal for his drawing for this month. And I kind of didn't want to if he's available, wants to show up, wants to drop in and chat, that's cool. If not, I totally understand because I feel like he maybe needs to be focusing, and I don't know. I don't know if showing up on the show would be helpful with what he needs to do this weekend. But either way, no matter what, eventually we're gonna have Josh on, and we're gonna talk about Jacob's apartment and Two Stories and death. Okay. Let's see here. Josh, if he's not, I think the task he's laid out for him might get him there. But yeah, I mean, same could be said for all of us. Let's see here. Say cuss words. I'm sure it'll come naturally. I don't think I have to. I don't have to force it. As anyone who has watched me or knows me in private life knows, quite the sailor mouth. I remember in high school, it was probably more like junior high or high school. I had gotten in trouble for, saying something. I don't even remember what it was. And my mom said, and this probably explains why it's still a very serious problem with me. My mom said, Gary, people who swear, they usually do it because they're not intelligent enough or literate enough to know a better word to express whatever they're trying to say. But sometimes fuck is exactly the right word. So there you go. Okay. So where are we at? Starting page 22 this morning of DvsM 1979. Got, let's see here, an increasingly fat mock-up book here, so I can flip through. I don't remember if I talked about it last time, because I talked about time last time. I talked about clocks and watches and trying to figure out like what time it would be every time you're seeing a clock or a watch. I don't know if I mentioned this last time. Another thing is, I think I did actually, that at the end of my process, I usually go back and make any little fixes or cleanups or whatever things I need to tweak. And I know there are a couple parts where the main character, her arm is stretched out or something, and her coat has ridden up, and you should be able to see the watch that she's wearing. And I wasn't thinking about it, so I didn't draw it. So I'll have to be going back and adding watches on some pages, and I marked those. But anyway, otherwise, I think I talked about that last time. Starting page 22. Page 22 has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 panels. It's 2, and then 3, and then 1 all across the bottom. I don't anticipate any big nightmares for it. The only thing that's a little bit of a pain, but I kind of figured out this drawing problem last page. You see a glass beaker, like you'd see in a lab. And when you're drawing strictly black and white, it's kind of like, well, how do I want, I want it to look shiny, I want it to look glass, but you can kind of see through it. So like, how do I want to draw that? So you see it for the first time in this previous page that I just finished, and I went through a couple iterations of it, like maybe like this, and no, I don't like that. Maybe like this, no. Finally, I found it's like that'll work. So I got to draw that beaker again. But like I said, since I kind of solved that puzzle last page, that shouldn't be a big deal. Otherwise, pretty straightforward what I need to draw. I'm coming up to a page 24, that is a big milestone, not only for like the story, like it's a big moment. It's going to be one of the big moments in the comic. And if I thought this through right and wrote it correctly, and I'm imagining how it will play correctly, I think it'll be a moment that people will bring up to me after they've read it. It's going to be like one of the big, like, I think every comic probably, and at least every comic I try to write, there's 2 or 3 like big like moments that you hope like affects people. And this is one of them. So, and not only that, so not only is it kind of like important in terms of the story to draw, it's the first time in this story I'll be drawing a thing that's I'm going to be drawing a lot of after that point. And it's a big deal. It's a central thing. I know I'm being vague, but spoilers. But it's like, it's something that when I first started drawing this, page 1, I was already thinking like, I'm going to have to draw that thing on page 24, and thinking about like, that'll be interesting. So that's going to be, and that 24 is also interesting because it's a big moment. It is a full page, like it's a 1-panel page. It's a full spread. So I'll be spending a whole week trying to make this spread look worthy. So that's, like I said, so I'm 22 on page 22, starting page 22 today. Not next Saturday, but the Saturday after, I'll be starting this like big page that's kind of a big deal. And it also, I'm just checking this before I say something and accidentally lie. Yeah, I think it's not halfway in terms of page count, but it's definitely halfway in terms of my drawing workload. And I know that might be confusing because it's like, why wouldn't page count be the same as drawing workload? We'll get back to that some other time. Anyway, let's see here. Okay, let's see what's going on in the chat. Gary Swearsley, true, not untrue. Question for Jim, why do you have a Frank Salazar puppet? Yeah, I'm curious about that too. What is the deal with that puppet, Jim? With this question, will there ever be nudity? Well, there was a little bit of nudity in 1975, if you look closely enough, because there's the Fuddler victim in the kitchen. And spoilers, if you don't want 75 spoiled, this is a very minor spoil. But maybe actually this will make you want to run out and buy it. Who am I to judge? But if you look closely at one of the panels of DvsM 1975, you see a hint, just a hint of scrotum. Just a little bit. It's like the flavoring in LaCroix. It's just like it's the essence, scrotum essence, just a little bit. So yeah, that's why I had to have the nudity disclaimer on the back of 75. In terms of future installments, that's an interesting question. It's funny that you asked it because I know we haven't talked about it, but so not the next one. The next one is DvsM 2001, but the one after that, I don't know if I'll go through with this, But I have in my concept of that story right now the idea that maybe one of the main characters is nude for a great deal of the story, and I can't get into why. There's like a legit story reason, but I can't get. But the problem, I just can't. I haven't settled on that yet because that's like 2 stories away. I know the outline of that story, and it doesn't really matter. Like I could go either way with that. I think once I actually sit down and start writing the script, though, I'll be able to decide like, do I want to do that? There's a part of me as a creative. Uh, and a comic creator that loves the idea of like, because it would just be kind of, and it's not unheard of. I wish I remember the name of it, and I'm not going to dig through my long box right now. There's a comic I read just recently in the past year where the main character is naked, basically, not even basically, is naked through at least the entire first issue. And it's not like a sexploitation comic. It's like there's a story reason, so it wouldn't be unprecedented. I wouldn't be breaking new ground. But there's something really attractive about that to me because it wouldn't be titillating. It would be more played for like the vulnerability of like. It would be like a bad dream, you show up to school without your clothes. But I don't know. I don't know if I want to do that. And that also creates issues where it's like, I use people as references for a lot of these characters. And sometimes I change them very dramatically where they don't look anything like the real person. And sometimes I go very closely and basically make the character look like whoever I used as a reference. And that might be creating a lot of work for me where I can't imagine when I think of my list of potential models and think like who would be willing. They wouldn't have to pose in the nude. I can draw. Like that wouldn't be necessary. But in the book it would look like they were naked. It would be exactly like Raving Man in DvsM 1975. Raving Man also would be like a great music festival name or a band maybe. But like so Luke sat in for the Raving Man character in DvsM 1975. Luke didn't have to. Luke wasn't naked for the posing. He didn't have to be naked. He was fully clothed. I drew him as naked because I can draw. Okay, so let's say I pick someone, and I like also. Now, this is an important element of this. I'm glad I can talk this out with you guys because this has all been going on in my head. This character in DvsM number 5. It doesn't have to be a woman, but I've imagined this character as a woman. Let's say hypothetically, like who am I going to find among my friends who'd be willing to be drawn appearing as nude in a comic that's going to go out? Like that's a big ask. So then I have 2 choices. I can either completely redraw, like change their facial appearance. So I'm using them as just like, where is your anatomy? Where's your arms? Where's your legs? Where's your face? What kind of expressions are you making? But I'm changing how they look entirely. So it's not recognizably anybody. But now I'm totally changing how somebody looks and drawing a naked person that wasn't there before, which it's like, now I'm getting like, this isn't creating a lot of kind of extra work for me. Or I could hire some like life drawing model, but that's so I don't know. And then there's the added thing. This kind of reminds me of DvsM 1997, where originally the character of Jenny was going to be a Native American person. And I was really worried about like, do I really want to write like an alcoholic Native American character? That's tightrope walk. And I felt like it's certainly doable. Like anything's doable. It's all execution. But am I good enough to pull it off? And that was the question. With this thing in DvsM 5, okay, a female character is naked through the whole thing. I wouldn't want it to be for titillation. I wouldn't want it to be like Gary's weird sex DvsM. I would want it to be like, I know without getting into spoilers, like that's not the point. Can I do that effectively? Can I ride that line and not let it become something I don't want it to be? I don't know. And this is why like these are things that I'm gonna have to figure out after I finish DvsM 2001, which is after I finish the one I'm working on right now, DvsM 1979. So, long story short, will there ever be nudity in DvsM? There already has been a little bit of nudity. There may be more, but it's sort of TBD. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I don't think Josh really needed a fully explicit sex scene in 2 stories. That was weird. It was a weird choice. I don't know why he did that. DvsM probably isn't kid friendly anyway. I would say, I don't know. I'm not a parent. I can only go from my own recollection of what would or would not have scarred me as a kid. But I would say it's at least PG-13. Like, I think like that's I don't I think a teenager could certainly handle DvsM. I think maybe even like a 12, I don't know, 12-year-old or something like that, 10. But again, your mileage may vary, your kids' mileage may vary. Um, I actually think while a 12 or 11 or 12-year-old might be able to handle DvsM in terms of the content, the um, intense content, I think they would probably be bored. Like it's such a character thing. I don't know if they would care about it, but I don't know. Okay. So I'm going to go back to setting up page 22, which I started a little bit before we started broadcasting. But, I have a bunch of books that I've backed that showed up in the mail this week that I'll share on Instagram. I'm kind of behind, but my buddy Keith Foster, his new book, Three Protectors, showed up, which I have not even gotten a chance to flip through yet, but it's sitting right here. This is one of the things. I forgot he is great with the little like elevator pitch, like boom. And I forgot exactly what his was for this, but it was something like Kung Fu Tournament in Space. Isn't that great? Let me tell you something. When I move on from DvsM someday, years from now, I'm not gonna be able to get this back in the bag right now. It's like getting dogs in a tub. I aspire for my next project to be super, super, like have a nice, fun, short pitch like that. Kung Fu Tournament in Space, something like that. That's pretty fun. Okay, setting up the page. I'm not going to be able to look at the chat for a second. So please police yourselves. And I think I got it. Let's see. The panels, at least. All correct. 2, 3, 1. Yeah. Cool. All right. So you all live different places. Just to make you feel better about wherever you are, the temperature today, where I am, is going to be 111. And tomorrow, when I intend to mow the lawn, it will be 113. And the reason, you might ask, why would you mow the lawn on such a horrible day? Because it doesn't get really any better after that. It's 114 the day after that. It's 111 again the day after that. Like, it's all bad. And once you get above 100 or 105 degrees, it all fucking sucks. It doesn't really matter. Like, there's not really a better or worse day. Paul, how's it going, man? All right. That page is set up. Now opening the Excel doc with whatever dialogue there is for page 22. And it looks like there's only a little bit of dialogue, which is sometimes nice. There's pros and cons to a lot of dialogue or no dialogue. A lot of dialogue, the pro is you don't have to do as much drawing because there's a lot of dialogue in the way. And since I do the dialogue first, you know, I can look at the panel and then say like, okay, well, I don't have to draw anything right here because there's text in the way. But the minus is, you know, I mean, you do want to be able to, sometimes that can really box you in and it limits your drawing options because there's all this text in the way. On the other side, when you're looking at a page like this where there's almost no dialogue, and I think there's been a couple pages that I've just done where there was no dialogue. You're just watching characters do things. The perk of that is it really allows you to kind of draw a piece. You know, you can treat a panel like a canvas and you can really, like, I don't know, I think be a little more finessey with your composition. The downside, of course, being that there's no cheats anywhere. You're not covering anything up with dialogue and everything needs to be drawn. Everything that you would see with that particular view, like there's no getting around it. So. Now this is, as usual, great streaming. Okay. Where are we at? Pick 3 countries for national sensation. Trying to think where I'd be most flattered if I learned some country was into DvsM. I mean, obviously, you know, I have to pick the United States for one, if only because I think I would feel weird if, you know, I did this whole series and put it out there and I'm an American and for some reason it didn't click with any other Americans, but in some other like that would, it wouldn't be bad, but it would be strange. Like I think I would spend a lot of time thinking about that and wonder like, why am I, how, in what way am I not relatable to other Americans? Maybe that's not a terrible thing, but I don't know. I think that would be weird. So United States. And then after that, you know, I have a lot of admiration for French comics. A lot of, I think, like some of the greats come out of France. So if I had like a weird, intense French following, I would think that was pretty cool. So I'll say French. And plus, I think DvsM has been like by other people compared, like said, it's like, oh, it kind of has a European comic feel, which I can't exactly define, but I sort of see what they're talking about. So that would be kind of a nice validation, like, oh yeah, you know, there's people in France who are reading DvsM. That would be cool. And then finally, and this, there's no chance of this, but I also have a lot of admiration for Argentinian comics because they seem to be about, especially like in the past decades, really bold and daring and risky, and the challenging authority, challenging people in power at great personal risk to themselves, the artists and the writers. Like, it's interesting if you really go into like comics around the world. Not that comics anywhere else aren't about things with a capital T; they absolutely are. But in Argentina, especially like in the past, you know, 40 years or so, 40 or 50 years, like it's a whole nother level. Like they are really taking on very dangerous topics. Like I said, at great personal risk. There are comic artists and writers in Argentina that disappeared, taken away to prison, you know, like, I mean, it's scary, scary stuff. So again, why would they even blink at DvsM? But it would be very cool if like some Argentinian somewhere was like, you know, the only American comic worth reading is DvsM. That would be like crazy. That would be amazing. So those are my 3. Kind of, there's music for each one that I was listening to a lot when I was writing and drawing it. And I have, I'm self-censoring here. I'm planning a couple trailers for DvsM 1979 as it gets closer. Probably one that will do like a on sale date that'll be a couple months in advance of that, like a teaser, and then there'll be one saying like on sale now or on sale, this week or Friday or whatever. So like right around launch. And I have music picked out for both of them. And there's one probably will be the teaser. I don't even want to say the band. It's a contemporary, a 70s band. And when I heard the song, I was so excited to use it to promote DvsM 1979. I almost wanted to like cut a teaser just showing pages of the script because I hadn't even drawn anything yet. So I've been dying to share like this song that I found that I was like, oh, this will be perfect. This will be perfect for like, I just love how appropriate it is. And period correct, which is pretty cool. So yes. Like I said, the Spanish-speaking world takes their comics seriously. I don't know if I know that one. And I know my 70s music. I might be a little older than people realize. Like I remember the 70s. And my mom played lots of records. She was a music person, so it's all very familiar. Maybe I would know it if I heard it. Is this a real thing? Reunited by Peaches. I gotta look at this right now. Reunited by Peaches and Herb. What is that? Wait, I think I might know what this is. Wait. Let me see if this is what it is. It's a Coors ad. I'm skipping into it. So. Oh, absolutely. Okay, I didn't know it was Peaches and Herb like that. I didn't realize that was. But I knew I would know it if I heard it. Yeah, Reunite. Okay. Yeah. Okay. No, but I'm closing in on 50, Frank. Yes. Yes. That's crazy. Peaches and Herb? Were they one-hit wonders? It's weird to me that I know the song so well, and I don't think I'd ever heard the band name. Okay. I am trying to figure out my dialogue sheet. So panel 112 has my dialogue. Panel 112 is that one. Okay. In my Excel spreadsheet, I have the dialogue, the panels basically just in a list, numbered. And then, I'm laying it out on a sheet and I have to remember like what number is which panel. But you know what? As usual, this is where sometimes I've talked about this, especially on the Making Comics podcast with Keith Foster and Scott Lost. You should check it out. Great guys, great creators, and a really fun podcast to listen to. I've talked to them about how basically my last round of edits is usually when I'm placing text into a page. And I'm reading this right now and realizing like I don't need this last line of the one that like I'm just deleting that. Like that we can do with less. All right, now I'm going to gather my reference images. And this is another. This page and the previous page are very, how would I describe it? Still life heavy, where you're seeing a lot of things in a space. You're watching a character go about their business, but you're like the character is doing things with things. And like the panels are sort of focused more on those things rather than the character. It's sort of like, look at this thing over here, look at this thing as the character's messing with them. Which I have to admit, I enjoy drawing people more than stuff. I don't dislike drawing stuff, but people are more interesting. So, but this previous page and this one are very still life heavy. Then going forward, we're back to characters. It's just a couple pages of letting the reader see things in this space that are important for them to see. Pink Floyd would be pretty cool. The sound of DvsM. Pink Floyd is funny. I haven't. So even though I am very much like I cut my teeth on 70s music, there wasn't a lot of Pink Floyd being played in the house, so I didn't get a ton of it. A little bit, like definitely, and like any kind of alternative kid, I watched The Wall and all that stuff, but it never like really fixed in my head. But then in college, junior college, I started taking life drawing classes, and because as I mentioned just a second ago, I prefer drawing people to still life. And there was this one model. If you take a life drawing class, like usually they rotate through models, but at least in my experience, there's usually like a couple that are just always there. Not always, but like recurring. They're like every couple of weeks, it's like that. It's that guy again or that girl again. And there was this woman who was one of our models who she had like a whole thing where anytime she was in posing, she'd bring a little boom box because it was, mid 90s, I guess. And she would always play Pink Floyd while she was posing. Always. And these are long, like an hour and a half class, 2 hours. Like these are studio. Testing, testing. Can you hear me now? Where did I cut out? I switched. I just now, to see if that makes a difference, I switched from the microphone on my computer to my desk mic. What was I talking? Where did I drop out? Yeah, that was so I at least got that far. This girl, yeah, every time she posed nude, she had to listen to Pink Floyd. And so that's what I always associated with, was like drawing with charcoal in a studio art class. My Sharona, yeah, okay. Okay, DvsM World War II edition. No, DvsM 1975 is the first story in the DvsM continuity. Though someday, and I was just thinking about it the other day, someday I do want to circle back and do a character creation analysis video of George, aka Old Man in Black from DvsM 1975. And his backstory obviously will way predate 75. He goes back to World War II. So you'll get a taste of what was going on with him during World War II. But no, 75 is the beginning of DvsM. Okay. Where was I? Reference images. Reference images for page 22. And I don't think I have any of my physical stuff handy to get a better look at some of the stuff I'm drawing in this scene. It's always good to have like the real thing. And I remember I scoured Amazon and eBay for some of these objects, and they're around there, but they're over there in a box, and I'm not going to dig them out right now. I'll share some on Instagram at some point. But do you ever reach out in I'm trying to, there was probably a missed word here or something. Did you ever reach out in UFO? I'm assuming, no. I've always been afraid to delve into the UFO community. Just because I don't know if that's a machine you can shut off. Like, you need to be very intentional about turning it on. I don't know. But eventually, you know what is going on this weekend in Phoenix that I regretted not noticing until now, but I got to sign up for their future updates, is like the Mad Monster convention, which is like a horror sci-fi convention. They have guests. It's just like a Comic-Con, but for horror sci-fi. It's like, oh, I kind of, maybe in the future I need to have a table at something like that. That sounds pretty cool. And at this time next year, I'll be probably in writing mode, so it'd be very easy to go do it. So I got to follow it for next year. For the pandemic, we had a live figure. Yes, I've done Dr. Sketchies. That must be nationwide, because I've done it here in Arizona. I don't think I could handle Corbell. I love all that stuff. It's funny to say this about like a UFO guy, but I can't take him seriously. I don't know. He looks like he should be starring in like hipster shaving product ads, not telling me about aliens. And I know that's very unfair to just dismiss him based on appearance alone. But the tattoos and the beard and like the vests and shit, like No. I want you to be making me a craft cocktail. I don't want you to be telling me about aliens. So I would like to meet that guy. This guy, I forgot his name. Oh, no, I haven't yet. No, but I downloaded. I'm probably going to listen to one of the podcasts for that show you sent me today while I'm drawing. So, what? I have not. Now I got to hear this. I remember, like, honestly, and I don't mean that. Like, I really have no strong opinion about Corbell, but I remember I sat through that latest Bob Lazar documentary that he was involved in. And the only thing that kept him from being the most distracting and off-putting thing about that documentary was Mickey Rourke's voiceover, which was unbelievable. Like, every time Mickey Rourke started intoning serious, narration, I couldn't. I wanted just to die laughing or roll my eyes so hard I got dizzy and vomited. Like, those were the competing things: die laughing or vomit. Why him? Why do we even need, like, I believe there's potential for a great Bob Lazar documentary out there, and it just hasn't happened yet, and it bums me out. Because Lazar's story is interesting. I don't know if I believe him or not. I'm agnostic about Bob Lazar, but I've always been very fascinated by Bob Lazar. There's a lot that's interesting about him that you can't say about other people who allege crazy things. Like, there's just enough to be like, I find it hard to just kind of dismiss him out of hand. Like, he's kind of compelling. But I don't know. He could be totally delusional liar. I don't know. But his stories are pretty great. And there's something about them. He's got a... Now, this is a personal thing. Like, my response to his stories is kind of, it's individual. There's this kind of bland, everyday realness quality to his stories that to me reads as more likely true. Like, there's something about how, you could sum up Bob Lazar's stories like, yeah, they have spaceships and they're trying to figure them out and they can't. And, like, we took cracks at it and we couldn't really figure it out. And yeah, it's right over there. It's right over there. You can go up on a hill and see it. There's something about that. And that tone is in DvsM too. I think that just is like, to me, it's like, I find that more believable than, like, this crazy, like, they're trans-dimensional entities. They're here to tell us secrets about your chakras. Like, all that is like, get the fuck out of here. But, like, when it's like, oh, yeah, no, they found a ship and it's just they locked it away, like, in the Indiana Jones top secret room, and they don't know what to do with it, and it's just way beyond them. It's like, if a Stone Age person found an iPhone, they're like, yeah, this is really cool. We have no idea what to do with it. And that's where we're at with it. We don't really have a lot of information. We don't have any good answers. But it's out there. Like, that to me is like, I buy that. I can accept that. Yeah, I mean, it's a weird choice, right, Paul? Why? It's distracting. And that the voiceover, it shouldn't be distracting. It could be like, it could be like, Attenborough or whatever. It's like, oh, this guy has a very nice voice. But it should never be like the thing you're focused on is like this guy talking. You should be like, and that's what it is when Mickey Rourke starts grumbling into the microphone about aliens and the government. And it was at some point, it's like, is he doing poetry? What is happening? What is going on in this documentary? This is not what I wanted. Yes. Yeah. And that's why I've never made a big point of it. But, I try to weave in UFO lore
to DvsM in places. The stuff that I like. There's some stuff that's like in the DvsM universe, there's UFO lore where, you know, if you pin down Ruben Garcia, the Man in Black, and said, like, what about this? He would say, like, that's made up. That's nonsense. Like, that's just people. But then there's other things he'd be like, well, no, that's true, you know? And one of the things that he'd be like, no, there's truth there is Lazar. Like, I always imagined Lazar exists in that universe. And I actually had a plot for a DvsM comic that I scrapped to maintain the 6-issue arc. There was a story I had outlined that I was like, this doesn't really fit anywhere. But just as a little like Easter egg, I wanted like a guy being toured through Area 51 or the S4 site or whatever. And you would see who was very clearly Lazar in the background, like messing around with, you know, the ruined craft. Like I wanted that little nugget. And I always imagined that the ship that's captured at the end of DvsM 75 is this very same sport model that Lazar was working on, you know, 15 years later or whenever he claims he was there. So like I imagine that all being, there are some elements of UFO lore that I'm just taking as canon in DvsM. And there's hints of that throughout. There's actually, no one's ever asked me about it, and I'm not going to elaborate, but there's, in part of Ruben's hallucination in DvsM 75, he sees an image of something that references another bit of famous like alien lore that I'm just accepting as like maybe true in the DvsM universe. And also accepted as true in the DvsM universe is a little how do I want to describe this? I do have my own little kind of UFO story. I've alluded to it in the past. It's not one that I'm ready to tell publicly because I'm waiting for someone to retire who was like a big part of the story. And this person is a good friend of mine and a professional and a serious professional who has the same job that this person had when we had this story happen. And the last thing I want is to tell this story and God forbid the UFO crowd zeroes in on it and starts bombarding this person with questions at their job while they're trying to be a serious person. They're dealing with the Corbells of the world. Like, I can't do that. So I'm waiting for this person to retire, and then I'm gonna publicly tell a story that's pretty wild. It's one of my favorite stories to tell in private life over a beer. But that one is one that figures into DvsM as well. And I've just always imagined there will be a point someday where I'll be able to tell that story very openly. And so it's already seeded in DvsMs you've already read. If you've read the DvsMs, there's little threads to this thing that I'll tell you about someday. Mickey Rourke would be a great get for Jim. And that would be the right kind of distracting. Not narrating your documentary. That's the wrong kind of distracting. Yes, that's exactly what I've been dancing around. Scott is an alien. I have the proof. It's actually a little bit like the Man in Black movie where he's a roach monster. He found the actual human, Scott Circland, and skinned him and wears his outer flesh, posing as a... The real Scott Circland wasn't into comics at all, couldn't even draw. This is the whole ambition of the weird Scott Circland alien. But we'll get into it when I tell the whole story. This will all be detailed in DvsM number 6, the exciting conclusion of the DvsM saga. Okay, I need to drop some reference images into my onto my artboard, so I'm not going to be looking at the chat for a second. I want to hear other people's answers to these things. Let's see here. What was... I want to hear, what's everyone think about Bob Lazar? Sound off your Bob Lazar thoughts while I place images, and then I can come back to some Bob Lazar reaction. And while you're at it, I'm not looking yet. While you're weighing in on Bob Lazar, what's your basic reaction to... what's your basic take on the UFO thing? There's aliens among us. On a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being, no, we're alone in the universe, and 10 being the aliens are already here. There was a panspermia thing. They made us. Ancient aliens, man. They're all around us. There's reptilians. It's wall to wall. You've been brushing shoulders with aliens your whole life. You didn't even know it. Those are the two, 1 to 10. Give me your number. Where are you on that scale? Just going to ramble a little bit here because I'm looking at a reference image. So for this particular sequence, I needed... I'm self-censoring again. I needed a period correct commercial product, like the packaging. And I searched around online thinking, like, certainly there's lots of images of this, right? Like, there's got to be lots of examples of this all over. Reference images, like, so I can see what that package looks like from all angles, etc. And there were shockingly few. It was really difficult to get a bead on, like, what this package looks like. I could only find, like, 2 images, and they weren't helpful. So basically, last week, I took like a half a day to recreate that label of that package to use as a reference. So then in like Adobe, you can like kind of rotate an angle to different angles to see what it would look like from different angles. And now I have to draw that effing thing one more time, which I'm not excited about. All right, let's see here. He's immortal. That's a new twist on the Bob Lazar thing. He's immortal. I think Bob Lazar in Michigan. Yeah, there's some that I think that's what makes him sort of compelling. Another aspect of it is that he seems like he's just some dude, you know? And it's very like take it or leave it. Like, this is what happened to me. This is what I know. This is what I saw. You can believe me or not, but this is what happened. Now, to be fair, it's a great way to pitch it, you know, if this is your thing. But like, if it's all just made up, but at the same time, it also kind of has an air of truth about it. Like, you can imagine, like, if you were coming from the same place, if those things had really happened and you were that guy, you'd probably have the same kind of attitude where it's like, I don't know what to tell you, man. Believe me or not, but this is what I saw and did. But I don't know. Yeah, I think that's probably about where I am with him. I think there's something to him. But there's also something that makes my spider sense tingle a little bit. And there's some stuff that I just have trouble with. Like, I think he said something that like he went to MIT or something like that. But he couldn't name any teachers. I could be getting the details wrong, but this was basically the gist. He couldn't name any professors. He didn't seem to know a lot about it. They went to MIT and they went around like, did you ever have a Bob Lazar in your class? And like, nobody knew who he was. Like, now, yes, you can put on the tinfoil hat and say, the government got to all of them, told them not to talk about Bob Lazar. Come on, bro. Like, that's just not how the world works. Give me a break. So like, and so it's stuff like that makes me like, I don't know if like, this isn't convincing. It's not credible. But then there's other stuff, like he did show up in that Los Alamos directory, the phone directory and stuff. And he absolutely knew where and when test stuff was going to happen because he got in trouble. I think this is confirmed. Like, he was bringing friends of his up to some hill in the Nevada desert where you could see all the test flights. And like, so he knew some, but I mean, so there's enough there where it's like, well, the guy knows something. Like, there's something there. Some of his story is true, but then there's other parts that's like, well, that doesn't seem to be true. So I don't know. So I guess, you know, as with all things, the truth could be like some weird fuzzy middle ground where he did have some top secret access. He does have some weird stories. And that's a great bedrock to build a whole like bullshit lie out of. You know, it's just enough truth there to like make it kind of hard to just like make it seem plausible, I guess. We're not alone, but they leave us alone. Okay. Ufologists is a pretty good word. Our spiritual nature. Okay. Yeah, MIT and Caltech. And I thought at least one or both of those, it was. And again, now you're getting this thing that's like, oh, he was scrubbed. He was scrubbed from it. And then there was another. I thought one of those, again, I'm not totally up on my Lazar lore, but so he was confronted with that. And he kind of had to backpedal a little. He's like, well, I didn't officially, like, I was auditing the class. Like, I don't know, some weird thing where, like, I wouldn't have been on the rolls. All right, if you'd said that to begin with, maybe. But now that it's like, I don't know. That to me, hey, could all be true. I don't know. But it also reads very much as like you're kind of spinning now. You're like, this is like course correction. Let's see here. Yeah, I mean, look, I hope, whether it's true or not, I hope he's somehow making money off this, because he did, like, people know who this guy is. Like, he's out there. And it only raises his stock that there's been all this, like, very official talk about it, like the Tic Tac and the Faber and, you know, like all that stuff. Like, that just makes people go back and look at him again. So I think he does sell stuff. Like, I think he sells, like, prints of his drawing of the sport model and stuff like that. So I hope, if it's real, I hope for sure he's making money off this. If it's fake, he probably deserves to make money off that too. Like, I mean, he came up with a great story and he told it well, and, you know, no real harm in it, I guess. So. Yeah, Jim, we're gonna have to do we're gonna have to plan a special broadcast where you sit in as Jeremy Corbell. We can just put his picture up and you can voice over. Yeah, Fire in the the Fire in the Sky story is pretty good. It's pretty good. Because, like, they were ready to charge his buddies with murder. Like, they're like, where's your friend? No, seriously, where's your friend? What'd you do with them? And I feel like if this was a whole, like, con and they were all in on it, that's when you break. Like, the moment police are saying, like, we're just going to charge you with murder, that's like, whoa, 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 slow your roll. Like, he said he's just hiding in a tent out there. This was a whole big con, you know, like that. So I think at least they weren't in on it, probably. So either Travis ate a bunch of mushrooms and wandered off into the forest and had a whole crazy trip, or he made it all up, or everything he's saying is true. I don't know. Back to looking at reference photos. So to describe that process, I have pictures of objects, I have pictures of reference models, I have, you know, pictures of whatever that I think will help me when I'm drawing. Sometimes it's vintage pictures, pictures of clothing, pictures of, you know, 70s offices, whatever. And what I usually do is, when I'm in that mode, whether it's Google image searching stuff or taking my own photographs of stuff, I'm gathering way more than I need because I want options. And I don't know, like, what's, you know, going to be most useful to me in the moment and what will help me understand how something looks and, you know, what's the right whatever. Anyway, usually it's when I'm at this stage getting ready to draw, that's when I'm making final decisions. So I may have 5 pictures of, you know, some late 70s phone, like a speakerphone, a late 70s speakerphone. And different models, different types. And I have to decide, like I'm building my artboard, I'm throwing stuff all over it. And I'm like, so which direction am I going with this? And I'm looking at pictures and deciding, okay, it's probably going to be this one. So that's why it seems like, why is this taking a little while? If anyone was wondering that, it's because I'm looking at pictures and deciding like, which one. Or which 2 or which 4 or whatever, but narrowing it down because I don't want every single. I think I want to be a little focused. I want options. I don't want to have to struggle through too many options. I want like an A, B, or C at most. I watched, let's see what's going on in the chat before I'm familiar with Weinstein, and you sent me that thing that I haven't watched yet. So yeah, it's very cool. Yeah, the idea of like the kind of the gravity based, like momentum based on, it's not even a speed thing. It's basically if you're at point A and you're going to point B, the engine is in a weird way is drawing those points closer together rather than making you go really fast. It's a totally different way to think of it. And that's why I feel like let's be the most cynical as we can be about this. Lazar is completely full of shit. He's just a con man. He's one of the best. We've all, like anyone who's even been a little intrigued by him, like seriously considering like maybe he's right. We've all been conned, okay? It's possible. Maybe even likely. I don't know. Probably likely. I mean, really, if we're going to be grown-ups for a second, probably bullshit, okay? Could be real, probably bullshit. But just his own unique take on how all this stuff worked, which was so different and fresh, just in terms of fiction, is, I think it's worth, like, I mean, this guy deserves some props that he came up with like a really neat idea. Better than a lot of actual out of the closet fiction writers, sci-fi writers have come up with, I mean, like his concept. It was, I forgot, there's a name for it. It's element whatever. It's the weird it's the thing that we've been able to synthesize in a lab, but it's never stable. Maybe it's not stable, which again could be, that's an example of something that could be sort of a disproof of his story. And let's Google it right now so I can get the name. Bob Lazar, element 115. Okay. So when he came out with the story and was talking about element 115, like it's something that the way the table works, you can hypothesize exists, but we had never seen exists. Right. Okay. So then we were able to synthesize it, but it's completely unstable. Now, Lazar presumably is like, well, it's because it's our caveman version of it. Okay. Or this is not stable in any form, element 115, and we just sort of disproved that there's a stable version of it. He could probably backpedal again and say like, well, we just called it 115. Maybe it wasn't really 115. Maybe it was 185, whatever. You know, like you can, again, but now you're course correcting again. So I don't know, like that's, but yeah, according to him, it was non-radioactive, fully stable. Since then, every version of it we've seen, which we've made, is not even close, and doesn't have the properties that he talks about. What does that mean? I don't know. But so I think everybody else in that era, ate up Communion, and that's a really kind of hilariously weird and kind of great stupid movie with Christopher Walken. But Stryber, I do think, is a kook. Like, I do think it's like a L. Ron Hubbard thing. Like, he's a struggling fiction writer who tried to make it by saying, like, no, this is real. You know, I don't. The more, like, as a kid, I was totally 100% into it, you know. But as I've gone on and like read a little more about him and read his stuff, it's like, this guy's just a nut. Or I don't know if he's, maybe I shouldn't, I don't know if he's a nut. I think it's not true. Like he's being dishonest. Like, I don't think he really believes any of this stuff. Or maybe he kind of does, but just because he's convinced himself, like he's drank his own Kool-Aid. I think it's a bunch of nonsense. Though there's great ideas in it. It's like fun. It's like fun stuff. The stuff he writes about is just stupid. But, and I do crib some of that too. I liked the idea of the aliens being able to make you see them differently. And that's like, I really enjoyed that idea. And I think that probably is the original inspiration for the befuddler gas in the DvsM comics. This idea that the aliens have. Now, I think in Stryber's work, it's more of like a weird thought projection. It's like a telepathy. They're doing a mental thing to you. DvsM is a little more like earthy, a little more grounded, where it's like they have some weird hallucinogenic compounds they use on people that can make them misremember and misidentify and see things differently. But, let's see here. Yeah, you could tell Christopher Walken knew that this was insane. And there are so many scenes in that movie where you can tell he's just like, whatever, man. And he's just like, just being weird and crazy just to like, you know, just to make it amusing for himself. That movie is like kind of cringy. There are moments of it that are very cool. Little moments that are like, oh, if the whole movie was this would be great. But then there are long stretches where it's like, what is happening? What is going on? Why are they still running the camera? Showed me a picture of you as a 70s kid. Yeah, I didn't realize that was you. He told me the same thing, and he showed me a picture of you as the same age. Yeah, we do look like we could be the same kid. Yeah. When were you? Are we about? We must be about the same age. Like I was born in 75. I don't know when you were, but yes, the pictures of me as a 70s kid will be appearing in Scott Serklin's an edition of one of his Young and the Dead comics, which will be kickstarting, I think, late this month. I think he's been saying that I had the honor and privilege of doing a variant cover for him. And I guess in those, like, we were asked to submit, anyone who did a variant cover was asked to submit like drawings of themselves. So I didn't know what to do with that to make it interesting. So I just did a 70s, like a period correct version of me from like the 80s. Whenever so I think I'm like 8 or something. I don't know how old I was. I'm little, so that's the drawing. Yeah, so basically about the same, pretty close. Okay, I think there's just one more big image I want to settle on. That one. All right. Something like that. Cool. Cool. Yeah, we're all about sort of a peer group. He didn't design them, but I think he popularized them. I think he was kind of the Lazar of his era, where his stories kind of broke out and entered like pop culture. Because I'd be curious. I doubt it. I bet if like whenever that book came out, which I think was like late 70s, maybe very early 80s, I bet if you went to someone in 1970 and say, draw me an alien, you'd get a lot of like sci-fi B-movie stuff. But then after Communion came out, if you went to people and said, draw me an alien, everyone would draw like the gray alien with the little chin and the big head and the big black eyes. Like that's, I think because that was on the cover. It's a great cover. It's like an iconic cover. Now that image existed before, but I think that made it like kind of the definitive, this is what an extraterrestrial looks like. And everything since then has been kind of variations on that theme, including the grays in DvsM 1975 and 97, DvsM series. And like the aliens in Close Encounters of the Third Kind and alien everywhere else. Like they've all kind of, now that everyone kind of understands like, oh, they look like they're very little and they have big black eyes and big heads. And yeah. All right. So I'm at the stage where I probably should start drawing, but I wanted to just chat just for a few more minutes. Maybe we'll shoot for like about an hour and a half for this live stream. I watched, what kind of geek catching up can we do? I watched Multiverse of Madness finally on Disney Plus. It was cool. It was fun. It was fine. Like I didn't love it. I didn't dislike it at all. Like I was really entertaining. I felt like this is something I haven't thought much about it because I've been busy and I haven't really sat and like, what do I think about Multiverse of Madness? But not like I would sit and think about a Star Wars thing. But I can't decide if Multiverse of Madness is kind of convoluted or the kind of convoluted you would expect of a multiverse movie. I don't know. Like there's just aspects of it. It's like, I feel like this is like, there's part of me, there's writer Gary, that's like, could this have been a little bit more elegantly smoothed out and shaped? And I don't know. I don't know, and I haven't thought a lot about it. But I think one of my first reactions was like, and also like tonally kind of convoluted. But that's kind of Sam Raimi, you know, like so. And again, like it may not be a bug, maybe it's a feature. I don't know. Like this is a horror movie. Is this funny? Is this romantic? Is this kind of bittersweet? What is it all those things? Is it okay that it's all those things? Maybe. I don't know. But I did find it a little like just overall disjointed in every way. I love what they did with the Wanda character. It was nice after all the my complaint about the Marvel series has been no matter how good they are, they're sort of inconsequential, which I think is by design. I've long said that none of those Marvel series are going to change the board very dramatically because they can't. I think the movies can't count on the fact that everyone has Disney Plus and saw the series. So you can't do anything dramatic. Like if you look at all the Marvel series, for the most part, overwhelmingly, characters end up exactly where they were when they started, more or less. Like the arcs are kind of shallow. So like Falcon and the Winter Soldier is a great example. When Falcon and the Winter Soldier opens, Bucky is emo, and Sam is Captain America, the heir apparent Captain America. And when you go to the end of that series, it's exactly the same. So when Sam shows up, it is Sam, right? Now I'm kind of doubting, was that his name? You know, like new Captain America. When he shows up in a future Avengers movie and he's Captain America and has the shield, no one's going to be thrown because that's how Avengers left off. Like, it didn't matter that you didn't see the series. And Bucky's still going to have, like, he's still going to be kind of glowery and, like, moody. Okay. You know, like, that hasn't changed meaningfully either. Lots happened. Again, shallow arc. All of them, you can say that, I think, all the series. It was refreshing then to see a Marvel movie that doesn't have that kind of shackle on its ankle and can really like, let's just do some crazy stuff that changes things. That was fun. It was fun to be like, Wanda now is in a very different place and Doctor Strange is in a pretty different place. And like, that's cool. And America Chavez, you know, like, I don't know anything. Like, she must have come into the comics well after I had stopped reading Marvel. Because I'm completely unfamiliar with that character. I felt like she was, for a central character, shockingly thin. I don't know if that was just me. Like, I don't know anything about that character. Like, oh, okay, so she's the teenage girl with powers. That's, to me, America Chavez in Multiverse of Madness. Teenage girl with powers. So, okay, like maybe I would like her to be more interesting. And maybe, you know, it seems like she's got to figure heavily. To me, it's obvious, like this whole wave of Marvel right now is working toward like whatever the next big team up Avengers movie is going to be about dealing with all this multiverse bullshit, because that's all it's about now is multiverse bullshit. Which I don't love, I have to say. I mean, these movies are entertaining, but I don't. And so if that is where they're going, Chavez is going to have to be a significant character, I would assume. My complaint about the multiverse stuff is it makes whatever happens in any one universe sort of meaningless and irrelevant. And in a way, Multiverse of Madness, maybe without realizing it, kind of put a pin in that. It was all about Wanda, and again, spoilers, mute it for 30 seconds if you haven't seen this and you're going to watch and you don't want to be spoiled. But Wanda, yeah, okay, you don't have your kids in this universe, but other Wandas have their kids. Like, you know, and you saw that a little bit in Avengers. Like, okay, Gamora's dead, but this Gamora is alive. Like, it undermines, there's no stakes anymore if you're dealing with this multiverse playground. So that's why I'm hoping, if this is where we're going, a multiverse, like a interdimensional war of some kind, which has cool possibilities. You could bring in the X-Men, you could bring in Doctor Doom, you could like somehow fold it where some refugees from a different dimension end up in ours. It would be kind of, it's a little hacky, but it's a way to introduce these characters that you feel like you should have seen by now if they exist, like Doctor Doom, or like X-Men. Like if there's a Logan out there somewhere, where has he been? Maybe make them refugees from this collapsing dimension. You could do that. If that's what they're working toward, cool. But the culmination of this should be, in my humble opinion, to shut down all this multiverse bullshit. Like, it makes it so there's no meaningful stakes. There are 8,000 Professor X's. Who cares what happens to 7,999 of them? There's 10,000 Tony Starks. Who cares about the sacrifice of one in our reality? You need to get away from this. It's bad storytelling. I'm not a fan. Now, one little footnote. Mr. Lujan told me, I haven't seen this, that supposedly there's an argument out there that the reason we're seeing all this multiverse stuff in pop culture is because the government is trying to seed that stuff out there to get us used to the idea, to introduce us to the concept, because it's real and it's going to be a problem. And they need to slowly acclimate us to multiverse stuff. So maybe that's why they're doing it. Or maybe it's just bad storytelling and a way to explain recasting characters. One or the other. Let's see here. Yeah, they did. They had those kind of long spidery arms, though. Yeah, so for sure, grays were absolutely a thing pre-Communion. I just think Communion made like the image of the gray blow up. And to this day, if you Google like gray alien, you're going to see things that are clearly Communion inspired, like that cover of that book. I didn't know that he had a cameo in Witch Mountain. Yeah, Stryver's, I don't know. Yeah. I'm assuming this is in response to my Chavez criticism, and I agree. It just sort of, nothing bad. There was nothing about Chavez that irritated me or bored me or bothered me. It's just there was nothing there. And it's not a Chavez movie, so maybe, but I just felt like there could be a little bit more. Just a little bit more, just to like give me some sense of who this person is. Yes, could have been more developed. They introduced the new Spider-Man in Civil War, and even though he was in a total of, really 5 minutes of that movie, 6 minutes, you immediately knew, like, you had a good feel for that character, and they were interesting and engaging, and you knew, like, you could picture, like, when they were going to, we're going to do a whole Spider-Man movie with what's his name, you were like, okay, that's cool. You didn't get that same thing from Chavez. I didn't get this, like, oh, now I want to see a Chavez. Like, that's the thing. I have no interest in seeing a Chavez-focused movie now. Maybe it would be good, but that's not making me interested. So it's making me interested in her showing up in someone else's movie, which is, I don't think, a great metric. Let's see here. Yeah, probably. They're definitely trying to mine like and one thing I noticed is, I'm sure they're all noticing it. I bet you're especially noticing it if you happen to be, Latino or whatever. Is that's not super well represented in the MCU. Though I hear Namor is going to be like Central American or something now. In the next Black Panther, the guy they cast to be Namor is, I don't think this is a spoiler, it's casting news, but the guy they've cast to be Namor in Black Panther 2, I think they're going to do like a weird Incan backstory or Mayan backstory or something. So like you can tell like they're trying, and I get it, you know, like you're trying to like, how do we get everyone sort of equal, not equally represented, but at least represented in some meaningful way in here. And so it's like, all right, so maybe Chavez is part of that, which that's cool. I just wish she was more interesting. Really, I was knowing here. Yeah, I didn't know who she was. I think I only knew who she was because she had been originally planned to be in No Way Home, the Spider-Man movie. And they, through rewrites and reshoots, they removed it. But she was, I guess that's where she was going to make her debut. I think. No. Yes. Yes. Actually, no. I think it's all convoluted. I think she was supposed to debut in this, but this, in Multiverse of Madness, this was supposed to come out like before No Way Home. And that screwed it up, I think, if I remember right. Someone, you can read this, but it was a whole thing where because COVID screwed up release orders, and because release orders were screwed up, they had to screw around with Chavez's character. So I think that's probably what it was, is that she was supposed to, this was always her debut, but it was supposed to come out before the Spider-Man movie. And because this got delayed, it didn't make any sense. Something like that. Anyway. The Hispanic guy, I wasn't jumping for joy because of American. It's not really Latino or American or from Earth. Yeah. Yeah, that's true. I mean, if she's not even from Earth, that's kind of weird representation. It's like she's brown. Great. Yeah, but by that metric, Namor is not going to be great either, because it's like, oh yes, finally my undersea Atlantean people are represented. So I don't, yeah, but you can tell they're trying. At least with the cast, they're trying to be. The people they're hiring, they're trying to be a little balanced. Let's see here. Yeah, Spider-Verse is still, honestly, it's, I think, not only the best Spider-Man movie of all of them, it's one of the best superhero movies. And if you're an art snob, like just for that alone, like it's just visually one of the coolest movies I've ever seen. Like Spider-Verse is great. You can't say enough good things about Spider-Verse. Let's see here. Yeah, what happened with Wanda's accent? She kind of lost it in the series. And I couldn't tell, did she lose it like when she was imagining herself in the TV show? Like that's when she had a normal kind of American dialect. But when she was real world in the show, did she still have the kind of Eastern Bloc accent, or did they lose it there too? Did they decide that eventually she just lost the accent? Did she get tired of doing it? What happened with the accent? This is the pinned comment. This is kind of, honestly, Paul, this is sort of my reaction to a lot of conspiracy stuff. Like if it's more than like one or two moves deep, and that actually, I remembered it was a similar sentiment in an X-Files episode where Mulder was going on and on about the government's hiding this and doing this and moving this stuff around, and it's all shell game, Scully. And Scully says something to the effect of, you're talking about a government that can't even balance the budget. And somehow keeping all this shit secret, like some of the most amazing secret, no one is talking, like it's, yeah. I think there's something to that. Though, counterpoint, the believers would say, it is all out there. Like if a skeptic is saying like, oh, all that would get out, the believers would say like, it is out. And you still don't believe it. That's the genius of the government, is that we know about Area 51. We know about the sport model. We know about Lazar. We know about the Tic Tac. We know about Fire in the Sky. We know all of it. and we still don't believe it. You see. What was this in reference to? I want to know. Help me with this one. What was this about? Let's see here. Big tubing wasn't real. Yeah, you should. Yeah, that's a good point. These New York, yeah. Yeah, she was great. She seemed like a good actress. She was likable. She can act. Like she did her part fine, you know? It just wasn't much of a part. So accents can come and go. Maybe she just witched it away. Maybe she decided, like, I don't want to sound like a gypsy princess anymore. So she could speak English. If she can make Black Bolt's mouth disappear, she could certainly fix her accent. Seeing the aliens. I see. Well, that's a fun idea. There is, I think, going back to the lore again, and then I'll probably sign off for the day so I can get some drawing done. There is conversation about the idea that aliens, whatever they are, and their ships, whatever they are so different. And there's just to backtrack a little bit. I'm sure people have probably encountered this before. It's sort of entered pop culture, but maybe not. There's a story that ancient peoples didn't have a word for the color blue. This was the idea. It was based on like Homer's, the Iliad and the Odyssey and stuff. Anytime they're talking about the sky or the ocean, like the colors they would use to describe it are anything but blue. It's just very weird. Blue is never mentioned. And there's this idea that maybe for whatever weird reason, because they never had to call out the color blue, maybe they weren't able to see it. Now, that's not a literal thing. Obviously, their rods and cones in their eyes are the same as everybody else's. They can see blue. But because there's not a word to describe blue, they're kind of insensitive to blue. You can go way down this rabbit hole, like on a lot of different topics. It's a big linguistic topic, like how much your ability to explain a thing with language affects your ability to even conceive it. Okay? So, back to aliens, there's this idea that aliens are so different, and their craft so different, and their technology so strange for us, that we wouldn't even know it if we saw it, and we would all see a different thing if we saw it, and we would all describe it or explain it differently. Because we don't have a framework in our brain to even understand what we're seeing. It's just so beyond that. And so they would use that to explain things like that's why maybe aliens were described as angels at one point. Now they look like this at one point. And the ships look like chariots in the sky at one point. Now they look like discs. Like it's partly our brain making it into something that we can understand. And that when we're describing it, we're not really describing what actually was seen, but our concept of what we saw, which can be different. Talk about that next time you get high. Let's see here. That's right. Everything was, it was because we were burning so much oil and coal. Everything before about the 60s was just shades of gray. It was just dank and dirty and dingy. Yeah, they must be canceled. Yeah. Anyway, Google that. Just Google something like did Greeks know blue or something like that? And you'll find all this stuff. And it becomes an interesting topic. It becomes a topic of, first of all, can you understand something if you don't know how to talk about it? Which people like poets and artists and everyone and philosophers, that's an idea that people have struggled with forever. But then also, the bigger thing, when you're experiencing something, whatever it is, whether it's an alien or your partner, are you experiencing them? Do you know them? Or are you, in fact, only having a relationship with their projection? Basically, and not even their projection, your idea of them in your head. Can you really know anything? Do you really directly know anybody or anything? In fact, are you only really knowing and relating to and having relationships with the concept of whatever that thing is in your own brain, and therefore is everything just a relationship with yourself? All right, thanks everybody. I'm here all week. I will see you next weekend. Starting page 23, which is going to be a fun page for no other reason than it's lead into page 24, monster page 24, which is going to be challenging and fun and an important turning point in DvsM 1979. Thanks everybody for dropping by. It was fun, good conversation today, and until next week.